Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to give it about a minute or two till we get some more people logged in. Thank you for tuning in. My name is Chef Inderpal. Today we're making beef short ribs. Like I said, give it about 30 seconds to a minute. Let some more people log in. Turn the camera back over. Thank you. Hi, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Chef Inderpal. Let's begin today. Today we're cooking beef short ribs. Beef short ribs. Hi, Mom. How are you? Thank you guys for joining in, by the way. Beef short ribs are technically a cut of meat that come from basically the cattle. If my two front hands were the front legs of a cow and my legs were the start of a rear part of the cow, then basically the beef short ribs come from the side of your arm, basically the sides of the cattle. So if I'm like this, they come from the side. Today, we're using boneless beef chuck short ribs. So these short ribs from the cattle are gonna come basically from the front region of the chest of the cow, is this way. I'm gonna walk you guys through today, my mise en place, what we're using today, pans, pots, and everything, and we'll go from there. First, we're gonna preheat our oven. We're gonna turn our oven to 275. If you have a convection oven, it's 275. If you have a regular oven, you're gonna do 300 basically for preheating. Again, convection oven 275, regular oven 300. Start preheating. You're gonna need a heavy bottom saucepan. I am making this recipe only for 2 people, so thus I'm using a small pan. But if I was making it for a larger portion or larger party, I would also use, then I would basically use a heavy roasting pan. The way I do my short ribs is completely different. Hey Atit, how are you? The way I do my short ribs is completely different. I use everything in only one pan, meaning that if I am going to be cooking my short ribs, a large amount of short ribs in a saute, in a heavy roasting pan, I would use this pan to basically braise all my meat, to cook everything, to have everything only in one pan. And basically, if you do everything in one pan, it eliminates the missing parts and components of flavors. So, like I said, we're going to be using a heavy bottom saucepan Today we're going to basically be using celery, carrots, garlic, onions, mushrooms, and tomatoes. The quantity for everything, I have 2 stalks of celery, one carrot peeled and cut. Well, I lost one. 2 cloves of garlic, rough chopped. Half of a Vidalia onion or a Texas 1015, julienne sliced. And 2 bella mushrooms, and 4 tomatoes. Typically, I do not add bella mushrooms, but I'm going to be taking my short ribs one step further after they've cooked, in which I'll explain to you in the next live video that we'll do many hours from now why I actually used mushrooms. For the herbs, for my short ribs, we're going to be using some fresh thyme. Thyme, I'll talk to you more about thyme. We're going to be using 1 sprig of fresh rosemary, basically about 2 to 3 sprigs of fresh Italian parsley. Totally different. We're going to be using California bay leaves, fresh California bay leaves, not dried, fresh. Good question, Chef John. You can use yellow onions. If you don't have yellow onions, you don't have a white onion, you can use red onions as well. If you don't have any onions and you want to use shallots, you can use shallots as well. As long as you have about half an onion, about a cup's worth is what I'm looking for. Typically in my short ribs, I do not add tomato paste. Like I said, the next live video that I have coming in a couple of hours, I'll explain why I use tomato paste. In my tomato paste, a secret that I always use that nobody else uses, my secret is chili garlic sauce. This is an amazing product. Half a tablespoon of tomato paste, about 1 spoon's worth of the chili garlic sauce. All of this cannot be complemented and not deglazed and paired with basically a great wine. Robert Mondavi, this is a great wine. It's a great red blend. I especially like this wine. It's because they finished aging this wine in basically rye barrels. Rye barrels have a lot of oakiness, smokiness to it. Great spice compound from that rye, that aftertaste. Once you cook with alcohol, you basically evaporate all the alcohol contents out of it. You're just basically left with the flavor components, the grapes, the sugars. In this instance, having a rye barrel where you can basically be left. I love Robert Mondavi too. Where you can be left basically with the smokiness from a rye barrel is amazing because you're basically getting 2 achievements from 1 product. A great product right here. Now, the star of the show, boneless beef short ribs, are these guys right here. I've taken my short ribs and I've kind of rough chopped them and cutting them into 1-inch cubes. These are basically only about 2 pounds. Like I said, I'm making enough for 2 people. About 2 pounds of short ribs. Chef John, great question. You can use almost any kind of wine. I prefer using more of a $10 to $20 bottle of wine. It's just because there's more care into the bottles. There's more selection of grapes. If you basically think about, if you're using such a great cut of meat and great products, you want to use a great wine to finish off your products. But if you can't use that and you want to use a great red wine, you can use box wine. We use box wine almost all the time in the culinary industry as well. Great question. Enough for 3? I think I have enough for a little more than 3 at these. Now let's get started, guys. I'm going to wash my hands real quick after touching the beef. So like I said, we've already started preheating the oven. We're going to turn our heavy saucepan on to a nice high heat. When it gets to a really high heat, while this is getting to a high heat, I'm going to come over here, take your short ribs, about a teaspoon of canola oil is what you want to add. Salt and pepper in cooking is amazing because you can always add more as you go along. It's not like last week where I was doing bacon and pastry, where you can only add what you're doing in the very beginning and you have to basically see if the end result is the right product. So I'm going to start off with a half a teaspoon of salt and half a teaspoon of pepper. Want to mix everything around. Great question, Mom. Can you alternate another meat besides beef short ribs? You can use almost any kind of meat. The reason people use beef short ribs in the stewing that I'm doing, this takes a long time to make. About 2.5 to 3 hours you can make. You can use any kind of meat the same way. If you want to substitute it, it's no problem at all. Do not recommend using fish or any crustacean product, chicken, pork, or beef, but traditionally always beef short ribs. While this pan is getting hot, let's get this pan getting real nice and hot. Let's get this angle going a little better. We're gonna add a little bit of canola oil in the pan. Want to get the oil nice and hot. Let's see, does this help at all? No. And now what I'm about to do with those short ribs is I'm going to take them and put them in a hot pan. The reason I'm adding this to the hot pan is because I want all the meat to get seared. I want all the flavors to get locked in. That's why before I cook short ribs, I always sear the meat to make sure all the flavors locked in. So when we're actually braising it, again, braising is when you're cooking it under under liquid, submerged under liquid. As it cooks, all the liquid basically breaks down the meat. You want this to get nicely seared on all sides, and then from there we'll go to the next step. Always add your meat slowly. You don't want to add everything at one time. You don't want it basically to splatter on you, and you don't want to overcrowd the pan as well. That's what you're looking for, is a nice deep brown color. If you can achieve that, perfect. I'm going to set these aside and strain the juice off, and I'm going to explain the reason why I strain my juice. Perfect. Oven is preheated. Right on schedule. We're going to take the beef out. Lower your heat. You're gonna add your tomato sauce and your basically chili garlic. You wanna add this for about 30 seconds to nicely get it burnt. Scraping it in the bottom. about a quarter cup of red wine, till you basically kind of form a nice syrupy consistency. Once the syrupy consistency is achieved, add your onions. Coat your onions and your garlic into basically whatever you've deglazed the pan with. You see how the pan is nothing is stuck to the bottom of the pan? The red wine has taken everything out. While this is heating up and getting cooked, you want to cook this till your onions basically become a sweat kind of texture where they're soft but not too soft. Another quarter cup of red wine, and set aside. The smell is so heavenly right now. Oh, it smells great. Once everything is kind of soft where it's at, we're gonna add the rest of our ingredients. Once everything is kind of mixed around into this kind of nice we're gonna add our beef right back. Mix this around. What I'm smelling, Chef John, it's very earthy. It's very minty. It kind of gets citrus notes. As I'm gonna add the rest of the red wine, I'm gonna basically get now smokiness, charred oak, barrels, very different smells. Add the rest of your red wine. And let your red wine kind of cook out for a good 3 to 5 minutes. Now my next favorite part that's coming up right now is adding all of the herbs that have to go into it. We got some fresh thyme and some fresh rosemary. Both of these come from the evergreen herb family. They both are from the mint family. Amazing products. They date back as long as 5,000 BCs, before even Egyptians used this. All throughout history, you'll find basically both products. Rosemary predominantly, more Mediterranean region, you'll see rosemary. Italian parsley, again, predominantly Mediterranean cuisine. Amazing thing. Rosemary, It can get almost up to 30 years old, up to 5 feet is height. Thyme, everywhere, grows everywhere. Fresh bay leaves, different than dried bay leaves. Dried bay leaves have more of an intense peppery to licorice kind of flavor. California bay leaves have kind of the similar flavor, but they're less intense and they're fresh. So these, I like them a lot more because what I'm going to be doing in the application, I need to take my herbs out. So if they were dried, they would basically be brittle and then they would basically break into my dish, which I don't want to do, hence why I'm using fresh herbs. So we're going to come back to this, where everything is kind of mixed around, nicely and boiling and bubbling. Start adding all your herbs. Give it a nice stir, gentle. Now, next step. You're gonna add beef stock. About 4 cups of beef stock is what you wanna add. You're gonna let this come to the first boil, and we'll cut it off from there. Great question, Chef John. Yes, you can use chicken stock, vegetable stock, or if you don't have any stocks, you can use water. You can use water as well. Preferably beef stock, is just because since we're working with a beef product, kind of keep the same relations with both. Is the reason why we're using beef stock. But great question. Just no fish stock, no fish stock, no crustacean stock. Now, like I said, I used tomato paste and a chili garlic paste. If I did not use those 2 products, I would have added about 6 to 8 whole black peppercorns. And the reason I would add whole black peppercorns is because whole black peppercorns give that nice, strong, peppery, earthy kind of flavor. But since I'm going to be taking this product into kind of a different way that I'm going to show you guys live in the next couple of hours, and I'll explain to you why I did what I did. Like I said, we're just waiting for this to come to the first boil. Well, let's come into a first boil. Amazing wine right here, guys. If you guys have an opportunity to buy this. They're making this in limited quantities. Robert Mondavi, private aged, rye barrels. Great question, Chef John, about salt. I'm gonna add salt after everything is cooked. I don't want to add salt at the moment because everything is basically going to be reducing, and as it reduces, more flavor is going to get enhanced. So at the very end, I'll add my more salt and pepper to it. Great question, by the way. Take you guys back here. Just taste how we have everything mixed already in together. Chef John, getting back to your question about salt, immediately as I tasted this product, very strong notes of fresh rosemary, thyme, undertones of the bay leaf came in. Salt and pepper, moderately great. Like I said, we'll add probably towards the end. See how this is not coming. And it's starting to boil right there. As it gets that first little boil you guys saw, I'm gonna cut the heat off now. As I cut the heat off, take a piece of parchment paper, and I'm basically gonna lay the parchment paper right on top. And let's actually move this. Parchment paper is gonna go right on top. From there, we're gonna cover it with a lid. We covered it with the parchment paper, and the reason we covered it with parchment paper is parchment paper acts as a barrier of moisture. So food basically that's cooked in parchment paper is a lot more tenderized. It's a lot more flavorful. Parchment paper does not burn. It's usually about 500 degrees that it can withstand. How important is it to burn off the Chef John, burning off the alcohol is a very important part. Alcohol immediately burns off within 10 seconds to 15 seconds on a high heat. The vapors will burn off immediately. So don't stand over the pan when you pour alcohol, otherwise you'll inhale the alcohol that's burning off. Great question. We're gonna take our finished product and we're basically gonna put it inside of our preheated oven. And we're gonna let this go for about 2.5 hours. Perfect. Is it a big difference if you don't use the parchment paper? If you don't have parchment paper, you can also use aluminum foil. Is another great option. Either or, parchment paper or aluminum foil is a great option to do it. Great question, Ateeth. always a great thing, Mom, to know if you want to eat before you come. But like I said, don't use wax paper to cook with. Wax paper actually will not be a great option to cook. The wax will burn off onto your food. So if you don't have parchment paper, aluminum foil. If not aluminum foil, a nice tight lid, basically to seal in everything. That being said, about 2.5 hours. We're at 12:30. Say log in back around 3 o'clock. Say 3 o'clock live. I'll show you guys what I'm gonna do with the short ribs right then and there, and go from there. Do you ever use a pressure cooker instead of a 2.5 in an oven, or maybe so? I have actually, great question. I've actually cooked short ribs many different ways. I've never used never used a pressure cooker method. I've done it in the sous vide. If you sous vide short ribs, that one usually is a little longer. We sous vide short ribs at about it's about 63 to 65 Celsius, and we do it for about 12 to 14 hours. A little longer on sous vide. If you did it sous vide short ribs, I would always do them the night before you go to sleep. So the next morning when you wake up, you can rotate your pans and kind of have the application ready to go. Definitely great to do a slow cooker. Slow cooker is another great way to do it. I prefer to do it the way I did it, and the reason being is when you sear off basically the fat or the meat, you're locking in all the flavors. If you use everything to cook into one pan, all the flavor that you've built into that one pan is now basically going to form into one dish. Slow cooker is a great option as well. I love using a slow cooker for a lot of my products. Nowadays, the fad's been Instant Pot. You can also do short ribs in Instant Pot. I have not personally done it that way. Seen many great recipes as that. Yeah, like I said, Mom, you can definitely use a slow cooker as well. Slow cooker takes between 6 to 8 hours, depending on how much you're doing and what you're doing. Great questions, by the way. But you can kind of almost mimic a slow cooker using an oven at low temperature. If you don't have, if you're trying to mimic a slow cooker, you can kind of do the same with a low temperature oven. That's why we're setting it at 300 degrees. Could you use other root vegetables? Yeah, sure, Chef John. Today I use celery, carrots, and onions. Typical French mirepoix, which is 25% celery, 25% carrots, and 50% onions. You can use almost any kind of root vegetable there is for short ribs. It goes really well with carrot puree, parsnips, turnips, rutabagas, celery roots, many different root vegetables short ribs goes with. Guys, any more questions? Anything else? No? Well, appreciate you guys tuning in. What about turnips and parsnips? Yeah, you can definitely use short ribs, root vegetables. You can definitely use turnips, parsnips, rutabagas, celery roots, carrots. Almost any root vegetable goes really well with short ribs. Thank you, Mom. Like I said, ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate you guys tuning in. I'll see you guys back at 3 o'clock. 3 o'clock today. I'll see you guys. And it takes about 2.5 hours to cook. 3 o'clock, I'll see you guys back on live. Have a great day. I'll see you soon, Jazz.